Good morning. Welcome and thank you for joining our webinar today. This will be on practicing as an essential service during COVID-19 pandemic. Andrew, our CE and registrar, and Mary Silcock, our professional advisor, will talk to you today. The webinar will be about practicing as an OT during the level 4 restrictions on movement and provision of services. It'll also talk about the legislative framework which the OTBNZ will be applying under a situation of national emergency, and also about how OTBNZ intends to operate during the period of lockdown to support the profession and the health service. We will try to give you advice from the OTBNZ perspective to help with the ethical and clinical decision making. And if you have any questions, please type it in the Q&A box on your screen and we'll address them after the presentation. And Mary and Andrew will now start the presentation. On to you, Mary.
Okay, I'll just share my screen with everyone so we can talk through a slideshow. Oh, hang on, sorry. Oh, what have I done? Is that shared? So I think that should be shared now, Andrew.
Yep, okay, well, kia ora koutou, and welcome everybody. Very unusual times we find ourselves in. And thank you for attending. And it's, as I said, an unusual time for the profession, and it's also an unusual time for the board too, as the regulator, as we try and make our way through what is a changing crisis from one day to the next. So the OTBNZ will continue to provide updates as we've been doing. We've been emailing those out to people and also placing them on our website. So if you've not caught up with those updates, they're there on the website. So there's 3 in total at the moment, and our 4th one should be coming out tomorrow. What we try and do is look at what's happening nationally, what's happening, advice we're getting from the Ministry of Health and other quarters, and trying to condense that down into an update and where possible give you the links to those organizations rather than try and give advice from our end. So I guess there's a bit of a disclaimer with the information of this presentation. Perhaps by the time we get to the end of the presentation, things may have changed again. So we try and, as much as possible, to keep in step with what the national government is saying, what the Ministry of Health is saying, and also what my colleagues are saying in other health regulators. So that's an ongoing conversation that we're having. And there may be other webinars offered in the future, if this is helpful for practitioners. And we'll look at the questions that come through and any emails that come through in the meantime to sort of give us an idea about what people are searching for, and then address that through a webinar or other packages that we can do, either email or through the website, and update and other information that we send out. So that's just to let you know that that's there. Mary and I will be doing a bit of a tag team here. So I'll respond to some of the points in the presentation, and Mary will too. So if we can move on, just talk about the content of the presentation. We're looking at occupational therapy and providing essential healthcare at the moment. That element of essential seems to be quite a buzzword around Ministry of Health and the government about what is deemed an essential service. Look at the legislative framework which applies under a situation of national emergency. Advice from the OTBNZ on perspectives to help with ethical and clinical decision making. I'll just pause there because I mentioned at the beginning that these things change daily, hourly sometimes. So the information that we try to present to you is a reflection of what the Ministry of Health is saying and the government is saying. And we try and keep in step with those sources as they come through. And OTBNZ as an organisation, what we're doing at the moment during the management of COVID-19. So you probably see from behind me and behind Mary, you can see that we're sort of conferencing or Zooming from our homes. And so all OTBNZ staff are now working remotely and operating from home. And that at the moment, touch wood, is successful to keep things moving along as we move through the annual practicing certificate renewal process, the relicensing process. Yeah, thank you. Next slide, Mary.
Okay. So in this slide, we're going to, just talk through the idea of providing essential healthcare. And as you are probably aware, there's occupational therapists working in a lot of different settings around them or two. So we are trying to provide guidance that is responsive to everybody's needs. So in the most recent Ministry of Health update on the website on Friday, I think it was Thursday or Friday, they were much clearer about what they're thinking is an essential healthcare service. So they've listed a lot of services that occupational therapists work in. So we may not be named by our name, our title, but we are part of those essential healthcare services quite clearly. So think of us, we are an essential service.
Moving on to point 2 around what the OTBNZ has done in responding to COVID-19, we've established what's called a special purposes scope of practice responding to COVID-19. So this will be on our website shortly. It's also available from the New Zealand Gazette if you want to look at it there, the details of what that is. It applies to those people, it doesn't apply to those people who are currently registered with an annual practicing certificate and are going on from Wednesday, the 1st of April, to continue in practice to be registered and hold a practicing certificate. It applies to those people who don't have a practicing certificate or have not been registered for over 3 years. It applies to students so that students can identify that they're interested in getting this special purposes scope. So there'll be an application form available to people to apply for that special purposes scope. There's no fee for that scope and it lasts for 6 months. So it's looking at increasing the capability of the workforce by those people who are at the moment outside the workforce. And it'll be done in tandem and parallel with other systems that the Ministry of Health has put in place. And I'll pick up on that later in the presentation.
And I mean, on point 3 there on the slide, the Ministry of Health is coordinating the use of health practitioners who are registered and practicing, but their services are not operating normally because they're non-essential. So they can support the workforce that is essential. So that link there is the registration for that, and that is so you can register there if you're willing to help and support, and you can say where you live, what area of practice you are experienced in, and what type of work, contact, face-to-face or non-contact, that you'd be willing to offer. So then they will, they're making this register of health practitioners, and then they will use you as they can where you live, I presume is the idea. And at on the same page on the website, on the Ministry of Health website, employers can register the same in the same scheme. So if you're needing workforce, that you can register there what you need, and that the Ministry of Health is managing that system to match people up. I think it's sort of future planning for when that is maybe really necessary.
I think you're right, Mary. It is around building the capacity of the workforce. Depending on how the virus spreads and compromises people in the community.
That's right. And that's right. So just if you're willing and able, that's a way that you can support And that is in addition to what Andrew was speaking about. If people are non-practicing or have been are retired and would like to help, they can, there's a drive for those people to come to do that as well. So they want to have an idea of who's available out there for any essential work, really.
Yeah.
I have just put, or did you want to add something else, Andrew?
Just to say that we've had a request from the Ministry of Health to have a spreadsheet format of our register. So the register contains all practitioners who are on the register with a current practicing certificate. So we've been requested, as of my colleagues in other health regulating professions, to supply a full register of names and contact details and those holding a current licensed practice to the Ministry of Health. That will change on Wednesday, which I think is the 1st of April. As you know, the new practicing year comes in. So we will then send an updated register. So just to alert you to the fact that the ministry is communicating with the health regulators in various ways. And one is to get a full list of those people that are on the register with a practicing certificate.
Yeah, and we've been fielding quite a lot of questions, concerned about personal safety and protective gear. So I've just put number 5 there on the slide. On Friday, the Ministry of Health updated this advice for personal protective equipment significantly. So there's a lot more resources there now to guide us about when we need to wear it in the community. And what is appropriate levels of it. So if you're wanting to know about that before you sign up and offer yourself, go and there's a lot of advice there now, much better advice on the Ministry of Health website now. And the DHBs are coordinating the distribution of that equipment. So is that, I think that's that slide, yeah.
So in relation to the legislative framework for practice, obviously this still carries on in this uncertain time. So there is allowance within the Health Practitioners Competence Assurance Act, and it's particularly section 8(3)(a), which means that practitioners can act in emergency. And that action should be commensurate with your skill and competence. But that may change over coming weeks and months, and we'll inform practitioners when we get that signal from the Ministry of Health about what they're expecting of practitioners who may be required to step out what is their usual scope of practice. So in emergency, you can do things that you wouldn't normally do in a day-to-day practice as an occupational therapist. Point 2, the special purposes scope of practice responding to COVID has been established. I've mentioned that. We're just working on an application form at the moment for people to complete. So that should be on the website when we've completed that. Again, it is about those people who currently are not registered. They may have asked for themselves to be removed from the register for whatever reason in the last 3 years. And so we can now start assembling information around those people who want to apply for that special purposes scope of practice. Yeah. Mary, 3.
So just to add to that in respect to practice, make sure you're to meet those obligations, you need to make sure you are trained to do anything that is outside our normal scope or your normal scope that you're used to doing. And if you are being asked to do stuff on that you're not used to doing, make sure you have a line of communication with someone and some oversight and ability to supervise your practice from someone who does have that scope of practice and is competent in it. So you're not, so you've got some support doing things that you may not usually do. So that needs to be in place to make sure you are providing safe practice still. And in addition to that, practice does still need to be grounded in our competencies and our code of ethics and our code of rights, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail. So just go back to those if you are uncertain and you're needing some framework to base your practice on in responding to complex situations. As well as that, other legislation will apply still, even though we're working differently. So if, the Health and Safety Act, but also the Health Information Privacy Code is very important now in this new way of working, which I just wanted to highlight especially. So informed consent, documentation and storage of electronic communication needs to be all considered and managed very carefully while we're all working from home, and without the structures and organisational support that we're maybe used to. So I just had a couple of little points to really just to say, well, I've got, I'm able to about this. Do not use your own devices or personal accounts to set up telehealth communications. That's, be very hard to keep confidentiality and privacy with that. If you are doing speakerphone, phone consults, telehealth, be aware that there may be other people in the room that you cannot see or hear, to be really careful what you're saying and to protect confidentiality. Be aware that there's family harm and family violence will be escalating in these times of stress, and there may be some very vulnerable people trapped in the bubble. So just be really careful and watch out for this when you are communicating with people. And just as a one to protect your own safety, remember e-communications can be recorded really easily on mobile phones and on computers. So just be really careful how you speak and how you behave with using telehealth, because it may be being recorded without your knowledge. And just as another little practical thing, if you are out visiting people, make sure you take your name badge or official identification to show that you're an essential worker. And the Ministry of Health is developing a template, a letter that employers can give their staff to say that. So that might be up there. I haven't had a chance to see if that's available yet, but they were intending to do that. So that's just some little things that I think would be really important to be thinking about. The OT board has got guidelines for social media and electronic communications already, and then it's in resources for safe practice. It's a guideline, and we're just finalising and finishing the guideline for the use of telehealth, an interim one that we've been writing. So that should be available by the end of the week at the latest, but hopefully a little bit earlier. So we will notify you about that when it's up on the website.
Just before we leave this page, Mary, to talk about the legislative framework, obviously people have got contracts of employment with their employer, and usually part of the contract is about acting in good faith, and that action in good faith relates to the employee and the employer. So I would urge you to sort of remember that. Those people who are in unions might want to look at what advice is coming from the unions around how in these times practitioners should be working, and what they can and can't do, and what the employer can and can't ask them to do. So it's just a little aside there around that the contractual obligations of both parties have to act in good faith.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, just moving on, in the same vein, we've got some ethical and clinical considerations here, just from our OT board perspective. And I know everybody's situation will be individual. And I just wanted to emphasise we've got a code of ethics which is is comprehensive, and it addresses the range of ethical situations, and you can use that as a framework. But we are, juggling multiple ethical demands on us. We've got responsibilities, if we're employing people, if we're managing people, for our colleagues, our other service providers, and of course the people we're working with, but also to our own whānau bubble. So it is a lot to be juggling at the moment. So but it is really getting down to ethical decision making. So in this current situation, the ethical behavior of developing relationships and communication seems very important. And this is the clause 1 in our code of ethics, relationships with people. So establishing working communication channels seems to be a really an ethical obligation we really do need to have for the people we're working with. So people with high and complex health needs still need to receive health services to ensure they've got the necessities of life. So, and in this current situation, inequities of healthcare will be exacerbated because resources are limited. In our competency through registration, provide really clear standards of practice about expecting equitable healthcare to be provided. So if you're seeing, just be really mindful of who might be missing out at the moment and take some action on this. So in saying that, that ethical juggle is not putting yours and their health at risk. So if you're not personally in a position or don't have the competence to provide the essential service, your ethical responsibility is to make sure somebody is going to do that, and that the needs are responded to. So I thinking that we just really need to have plans to meet that ethical obligation as health workers and occupational therapists. Establish a plan with your team, with the management, the service, about how essential services that you provide are going to be delivered and who's going to decide what these are, and communicate that with the people that you're working with so they know there is a plan. Infection control should be prioritised in all clinical decision making, and that should be the first action taken to be managed. Any face-to-face contact, how's that going to be managed? And I would really suggest clearly explaining how infection control is going to be adhered to and managed to the people you're working with, just so they know that you're managing it competently and safely to protect their health.
Now, just before we leave this page, Mary, have you finished? Or
Yep.
So, just to remind people that on the board website, we do have a document about boundaries to professional practice. Now, although it relates to sort of particular skills or tasks that OTs may be asked to do, which is not normally within their scope of practice. For example, can I be part of a cessation of smoking campaign by applying patches to people? Can I give out medications, etc.? Now, there's one helpful thing in that guide, that boundaries to practice guidelines, which is a decision tree towards the end of that document. And in these times when you're facing new challenges or being asked to work in different areas or do things that are not normally your practice, I think it's quite helpful to just look at that decision tree and just work through it. That might help to formulate, your responses and also your thinking around the practice that you're being asked to move into that you're not normally working in.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's right. And I think actually we did have a question before the webinar about keeping your own whānau safe. And I think that is the ethical dilemma, and you do of course need to keep your own whānau safe. So if you have compromised people in your own home, you shouldn't be doing face-to-face community work, I would suggest. But there's all these other roles that you could be doing that you don't need to put other people at risk. So it doesn't mean you can't support managing COVID-19. You just can do it in a different way. So I think that's really important to maybe talk to supervisors if you're still able to have that going on, or your line managers or your colleagues, to really establish who in the team is able to do frontline work. And it may be a sharing of roles that you're not used to be doing because of who's people's got in their own whānau bubbles. So those discussions probably need to be really had if they haven't been already, which I'm presuming they might have been. Yeah. Okay. So if we move on to the last main slide.
I think I've talked about this, the prioritisation of any Ministry of Health workforce related work. So I talked about them requiring a full list of people on the register with practising certificate. Like you, we look at the ministry and look towards the Ministry of Health and their website, which is really good for providing information to keep us up to date so that we're in step and not conflictual with the advice that's coming out from the centre. And so we tend to look at that and other websites and provide that in our updates to practitioners. So that's something that is happening. Close collaboration with the association, Occupational Therapy in New Zealand, Whakaora Nangaho Aotearoa. We're working with those and with key occupational therapy leadership to provide a consistent profession-wide support. So we would hopefully be having a conference, teleconference with the association and the board to look at what each organisation is doing so that we, as much as possible, complement each other rather than conflict with each other. We're also providing advice. I've mentioned that with our updates. And we've also identified for those people who are finding it difficult to apply for their certificate at this time financially, that there are some options that the board has put forward and how we manage that. And that's been sent out to people and is available on our updates. There's a link there to the document which explains what the 3 options are for people. And we currently have, going through our recertification process, we currently have 2,485 people who have applied for their practising certificate for the 2021 practising year. So a big thank you for all those people who have done that at a very sort of critical time for you and your organisation, and maintaining your practising certificate and the standards and competence and the ethical practice that goes along with that. So when you apply for your license, you're indicating you are continuing to be competent and practicing in an ethical way. Business as usual for all staff working from home, I mentioned that. We have daily or nearly daily updates will be provided where necessary to keep the profession informed about what's happening. So apologies if we're repeating what the Ministry of Health website is saying or directing you to the Ministry of Health website. And you can see that already, but they do update that, that website regularly, so it's keeping people informed about that. Our inquiries inbox, or inquiries@otboard.org.nz, is still functioning, so any questions that you have that we're not answering, you can put them through there. My email address is andrew@otboard.org.nz. You can contact me. I think we have these in the final slide. We've got those contact information. So I'm going to hand over to Mary now to talk about e-portfolio auditing.
Yes, well, I don't have too much to say, but we've just we're currently still finishing off the second audit. We do an audit around sort of every month, so that the second one is still in process, but we have halted it after that, and we'll just see what happens before that restarts. And I'm just here if people have individual issues they want to email directly about, but also the whole team is, we're all available to help with anything that we can. So I've got our, oh, hang on, let's get back onto the, So I've just got some useful websites. I'll leave this up for a few minutes. The slideshow will be available, so it will be back there. But if you want to take a photo or anything now, so the ACC practitioners will be well aware. They've got a big page. New Zealand telehealth is supporting the rollout of digital technology and stuff. They're still developing their COVID-19 tab, really, so it's pretty basic, but just keep watching it there. I'm sort of hoping they're going to put lots of resources there. And then I've got the actual big long link there for those guidelines for the PPE. And of course, the National Māori Pandemic Group is set up if you're wanting support for iwi-led work, which are doing really great stuff, I think, out there. And then OTNZ there. OTNZ is planning to, roll out lots of support. So just keep an eye on what they're providing as well for professional practice advice. So that's there, and then there's all our contact details, as Andrew said. And we will also be providing anything via LinkedIn and Facebook if you want to just follow those. Anything important will be in updates and emails, but also Facebook.
And just to add that our Wellington numbers, the 04 numbers, still work, and so that will come through to us as a work call for those people who don't want to ring mobiles. And there is one member of staff who unfortunately can't get connection with her work number yet, but we're working on that. So please bear for Tony Lancaster, who's our registration manager, who is at the moment managing a lot of calls around this time, which is normal around practicing certificate issues, etc.
Email is better, actually. It's just a little bit easier to manage. Okay, I'll stop this slides now. So.
Thank you, Mary and Andrew. We will run through some of the questions that have that people have sent in the Q&A box. Just want to remind you that we can send you a recording of this. You will get a link to our YouTube channel in an email, follow-up email. So don't worry if you have missed a part of this or haven't been able to attend. All right, here are some of the questions. So what will the supervision requirements be for those with a special purposes scope of practice?
So what you'll find in that is that their supervision should be available to the purpose within that special purposes scope of practice. Now that might not be an occupational therapist. It's depending where you're working and where you can get that supervision advice from. Obviously, it's much better if it's an occupational therapist, but if it's not, if you can't access an occupational therapist for supervision, then another health practitioner, a registered health practitioner with a license to practice, can act as a supervisor in that time. Yeah, so it's about collegial working and making those connections rather than trying to practice in an isolated way. You must maintain those lines of communication. May not be every minute of the day. It may be something that you store and take to supervision. When you're able to.
All right, the next one is, can you please clarify if a practitioner should be seeing clients face-to-face or if non-urgent interaction should be virtual if possible?
Mary, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I mean, everything should be non-face-to-face if at all possible. So only go and see somebody if you really have to, and it is essential. We will be high risk for breaking people's bubbles, and so it needs to be done really carefully.
Okay, so moving on to the next one. I heard this morning that all patients coming into the hospital will now be considered COVID-19 until proved otherwise. Will this mean the PPE guidance on Friday is out of date?
I don't think so. There are categories for if you know someone is COVID-19 and then for unknown. So I presume you just apply the category to everybody. But if somebody has got COVID-19, it doesn't mean you have to have everything. You didn't have to have goggles and you didn't have to have something else. But you just go and have a look at that. It is quite comprehensive. But honestly, like we're saying, just keep going back to that because there's been a lot of problems with the PPE, what is required and distribution. So the MOH is updating that all the time. And on that Ministry of Health COVID-19 website, if you scroll down, if you haven't had a good look at it, scroll down and they have a little list of all the updated documents that they updated in the last day. So you can see if there's been a new update without having to trawl through the whole website again. So I think you just really need to steer yourself back to that. But I mean, like Jacinta says, treat yourself as COVID-19, treat everyone else as COVID-19, I think, and just act like that.
Okay, so there's one question of not being able to use a work device or for telehealth and communication, and the only option is to use a personal device. Would that be okay or not?
Well, I think I'll start off and Mary will probably come in as well. I think I realize what the question means. You know, if you haven't got a work device, and I think that relates to the virus protection that is on that device that you might have. So if you do have no other option but to use your own device or devices for telehealth, there is making sure that the virus updates are up to date, and where possible, there's no interconnection between the application you may be using for telehealth and other applications that are on your own device. So it's looking about having that boundary around, a secure boundary around the device, the application, as well as the device. That would be my thoughts around that. Mary, I don't know if you've got anything else to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's essential in this week, I mean, you'd have to do something. But really, you need to get another device because this could be going on for weeks, and you don't want to be managing communications on your own phone with your clients as well. It's just, yeah. So I think you really would need to escalate that to your employers and get yourself a smartphone at the least that you can use.
It is difficult. It is difficult to sort of comply with that when people might have, you know, a device already that they're using and have used throughout their practice, to now add another app or to use it for virtually contacting people. So yeah, it is difficult to give firm advice around that.
Yeah, I would be very careful about it.
All right. Just a broader question on the same thing would be, you know, do we have any guidelines for telehealth? Because some practitioners are urgently requesting that and have referrals coming through.
I've got it. It's for me to do the final review. I will do that today and then make it available to people.
Yeah. So that should be up there.
Okay. And is OTBNZ working with AHANZ? Are they aware that there is a Allied Health Best Practice Guide for Telehealth 2018, that Appendix 1 has an example of informed consent form to be used with clients' patients?
Yes, we would have referred to that when we've written our guideline.
Thank you for the person who sent that in. It's always good to keep those lines up. So don't be put off by not communicating with us if you think we know the question, we know the answer already. Just
Mm.
keep those connections coming through to
Yeah.
us. That's really helpful.
I mean, and I think the difference is we wouldn't be providing examples of informed consent forms. So that's really great. I mean, use everybody's resources, because you'd need to apply the informed consent form to your practice setting. So we don't provide those sort of templates, but the allied health advice may extend what we don't do. So make sure you use all of everything you can get your hands on, really.
Okay, we have a few more. We will take as many as we can for the next 10 minutes. So one's on the special purpose scope of practice. Has OTBNZ included these in the guidelines, resources for support, supervision, and upskilling, and link work with existing services provided by OTNZ Regional Support Group?
No, no, we haven't. We hope that those links, those connections exist already, and that people in that special purposes scope should access those links, those connections. Yeah.
Okay.
And just one on that other special purposes scope that we haven't mentioned is students that are in the two programs at the moment have had all their placements cancelled. So it's going to be a difficult time for students, and we're obviously in communication with the two schools around what that means for those students who exit the program, who are meant to have 1,000 hours of fieldwork placements. So it does place an onus on us and the school to sort of look at how we can manage that. And if anybody out there has any ideas about how they could provide a fieldwork placement remotely, virtually, then I'm sure the school will be pleased to hear about that, and as would we. Yeah, so we've got to think about those people who are coming through the program and exiting at this time too. Yeah. Sorry, that just came to my head.
Okay, so do we have an update about indemnity insurance?
No, we don't. That's something that is not within our function or jurisdiction. It would be a question more properly answered by the association or union if you're in a union, or if you've got a private insurance with a insurance agency, then it would be a question that you put to them. In relation to those people who have a contract or employees with the large organizations like the DHBs and large NGOs and other providers, it would be important to check with them what their vicarious liability is, and that boundaries of the guidelines to the boundaries of practice document, what I talked about earlier about the decision tree. In there, it does ask you to check with your employer. If I'm going to do this, is my employer giving me authority to do it? Am I covered for vicarious liability by my employer?
Yeah. I mean, and just to add to that, this reminded me of another question that we have prior to this, was about the work situation. If you can't work because of your family circumstances and you don't want to compromise them, I mean, it's not the same as insurance, but the board, we don't manage that sort of thing. That would have to go through the MSD, the Ministry of Social Development's work, and your employer. So those questions, and if there's difficulties with that and you need advocacy, that's when you'd need the union or OTNZ WNA to support you. So the OT doesn't really, OTBNZ doesn't have a role in those issues, employment income issues.
Okay, so the next one is, what is the advice for OTs working in inpatient acute mental health units, that is face-to-face interactions?
Yeah, I've been really thinking about you the last week, wondering how you're managing. I don't know what advice to give, really. You really would have to use your employer's guidance and your own personal, ethical, but decision making for yourself.
It is a difficult area, maybe something we need to think about and return to give people some guidance, or another webinar about how you contact and maintain contact virtually, particularly in the talking therapies in mental health, and other areas where you've had that personal contact. And for those people in rural settings where normally therapists have traveled and done face-to-face contact with people, to look at how we do that. I was talking to a practitioner this morning down in Dunedin who works in mental health, in younger person's mental health, and he's working really hard virtually to try and keep these people off the streets, as it were. So there may be something that comes out of practice that we need to be aware of, that is seen to be good practice, our techniques, skills, ways of doing things that we're not aware of. So a call out, a shout out to all practitioners who are managing in this particular area, particularly mental health, talking therapies, to actually provide us with some ideas that you're using,
Well,
so we can
yeah, but I think acute inpatient work
share.
is different because you're in
Yeah.
environment, and occupation is so important in that role. So the ethical, whether to work or not, is quite difficult. And I mean, I have just been wondering how the wards are protecting your safety. So I just don't have the advice. I don't know how they're clinically deciding how to keep you safe and the people in the unit safe, and going out to different bubbles. I mean, yeah, unless you want to live in the ward. I mean, I saw a rest home in the news. Not that I'm not advocating that, of course, but the staff had gone to live in the rest home, so they were part of the bubble.
Somebody's just preempting what Pretty might say. Somebody's just sent in a question which says that they're working in a mental health inpatient unit and are using the physical distance rule for running groups that don't involve using objects. So groups of 3 to 4 people maximum. And our OT assessments are still being done to facilitate discharge, but once again maintaining that physical distance. So thank you for the person who sent that in. And more things like that are really helpful for us to pass on.
And I think, you just have to wash your hands all the time and just try and do those basic things. Yeah.
Okay. Please, can you talk about the potential roles that OTs may be asked to fill as part of the COVID-19 redeployment?
I can't answer that because that would be under the Ministry of Health, and we'd wait for guidance from them. And I guess if you fill in that expression of interest on the website, they will start to accumulate information about where people are in New Zealand and where deployment is needed for those practitioners. So that would be my answer, that it be centrally coordinated from the Ministry of Health, following an expression of interest that is there on the form, along with the information we've given to the Ministry of Health about where practitioners are, their scope of practice, and whether they do have a current practicing certificate.
That's right. I think they're thinking of the health line and contact tracing as well. So it's not just work, actual.
Yeah, you're right, Mary. It is about those back office functions, if I could say that, health line, etc. Yeah.
Okay, we have just 3 more questions that we can take now. So I'll just run through them quickly. Are people able to share those consent forms for private practice?
Is that the one that relates to AHANS, the Allied Health Network, New Zealand? Is that what?
Yeah,
look at that document. Yeah. Is that right, Mary?
That's what I think they'll be meaning.
Okay.
I'm sure we can.
Yep.
I'm sure that's available for everybody. Yeah.
Okay, what happens if there's not enough PPE on the ward I'm working in?
Well, how can we answer that? It's really up to your employer to provide that. And if it's unsafe for you to work, you need to obviously draw that to the attention of the employer. Yeah, I really can't say more than that. I don't know if Mary's got any words of wisdom around that.
No, not really. I think, I mean, at the moment, the hospitals are 50% capacity and they're really planning so people can work if necessary. So at the moment, that you don't need it all, I, by the sound of it. So I'm hoping that they've got it distributed so there will be enough for everybody if everybody is being considered as COVID-19, and have to have gloves and gowns. But yeah.
Your employer has a duty of care towards you. So to enable you to practice appropriately, they need to be able to provide the right equipment for you to do that safely. So again,
right.
the employer has to act in good conscience around those things.
Yeah, and I mean, it depends. I mean, if it gets really bad, I mean, initially the doctors were making their own. I mean, it got that dire, so they were obviously deciding to go ahead and work with whatever they could
But
cobble up.
I see from the updates that the ministry bring, and Ashley Broomfield talks about that all the time. It seems to be access to PPE is really important, but the information that he seems to be presenting at those updates are that there is enough around from the stock take that they've done around the supplies, etc. So
I'd just use this time while we're preparing to make sure you know what's happening with that, and if you do need it, you've got it. So, because the people we work with, they often, if it's less urgent, we need to see them tomorrow, the next day. We need to be able to do it. So just really organise how you're going to get your hands on that stuff and or that it's going to be available. Otherwise, you'll have to say you can't do the visit, I suppose. Or you can't do the occupational therapy. So I'd just use this week to organise that and make sure you've got access to it if that's going to be asked of you.
Okay. And how do we guide our OT support workers? Do we recommend they follow the same processes as the OTs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure what you mean, but if it's for infection control, definitely. On the website, they've got different guidelines for different types of workers. So there's healthcare providers, but then there's ones for home health support work.
I think if you're an occupational therapist and you're directing a support worker to do certain activity, I think you need to, as you would do normally, make sure that they're competent and have the skills to deliver that. Because the kickback is that you are maybe accountable and responsible for their actions. So I mean, that would be normal practice anyway for an occupational therapy who has support workers doing some work for them.
That's right. I mean, you may need to guide them with their ethical decision making, and support them through that, and decide if they're the best people to do the job, and be very clear about moving from one person to another. And that would need to be very clear if you're supervising those people.
All right. So the last one is, if I leave work, will there be support from the OT board?
It depends what you mean by leave work. I don't understand what, there needs to be more information in order to respond to that. So the person who's sort of presented that, if they want to expand on that and email me, I'm quite happy to respond to that. I don't know what support from OT board would mean for that. So yeah, that's all I can say in relation to that. We need a bit more background to it.
I think it was in relation to, because I abbreviated that question, sorry. It was in relation to if they have to care for their own family, or it's not safe to work for them because of their family members.
Yeah, and I think
So,
it would need, they would need to leave work, but they would need to have, their employer would need to know that they'd have to have that discussion with their employer, both acting in good faith around the employment agreement. And a reasonable employer would allow a person to leave for those circumstances, for sure.
that's
And
right.
would there be repercussions from the board for dereliction of duty, if that's what we might want to call it? I wouldn't think so. We would need to take the context into consideration on those matters. Most definitely, yeah.
That's right. And I mean, you can be redeployed elsewhere if you want to do a non-contact role in the interim. And I'm not quite sure how that operates with money and financial,
No.
income, but that's what the Ministry of Health will be facilitating with that form. So just register with that, and then you'll hear back directly how it would work, I think, for your situation.
Okay, great then. Thank you all for joining our webinar today. If you still have questions, do email us on inquiries@otboard.org.nz, or you can reach out to Mary or Andrew on their emails, which they have shared before. And if you'd like to view the webinar again, it will be available on our YouTube channel in a day. And we will be uploading the presentations of Mary and Andrew on our website as well. Thanks again, and good luck and stay safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, ka kite.
Ka kite anō.
Yeah. All the best, everyone.